G'day reefers, I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Thanks for watching Gallery Aquatica TV. Today we're back for part 3 of the Sump Swap Shuffle. With the Sump Swap Shuffle, we've transplanted a reef from a 300 litre tank into a 400 litre tank. Today we're going to show you how the reef is going and what we're going to do into the future. So let's check out the tank. Today we're here for a bit of a checkup on the system. We're going to do a couple of little jobs which we'll show you. But first of all, let's have a look at our reef and how it's going. Now bear in mind that this reef was previously in a 300 litre tank and everything in here was taken out and put back in. So the rockwork has all been changed and you can see that the aquascape is relatively new, and you can tell that because the epoxy which we've used to glue the aquascape together is still quite obvious. Now this epoxy is going to be covered in coralline in the future, and I'm quite happy with the coralline growth on the rock. In fact, everything is looking really happy and healthy. The corals are showing great polyp extension, and that's one of the most important criteria we look at when we're judging the health of corals. So when they have good polyp extension, their tentacles are out, and they're nice and sort of puffy, and these Jardines are great examples of that, as is the Duncanopsamia. Now, the Duncanopsamia is a bit of an interesting one. It was this piece was previously in the middle of the tank, and we've moved it up high and it's getting great light, but it's really puffed out and it looks so good perched high in the tank. It's always important when you're choosing positions for corals that you match the requirements for the coral with the position you're putting it in, but also the shape and the color with exactly where it's going in the tank. Now, the Duncan was split into a couple of colonies, and this is the other one down here, and you can see there's actually quite a large bit of die-off, and now that section was shaded in the previous tank, and we may look at cutting this off. I think this piece is still loose. We may cut that dead part off in the future. Then we have the Dallas coral, the Dallas acro, and this was once a really massive thriving colony, and we've split it up into a number of sections because in the previous tank it had run out of space and it started to die off a little bit. So it'd be really good to see how this colony looks in the future. But we've also put some smaller pieces over here. We've put the Dallas in positions where there's a lot of space for it to grow up into the top of the tank and branch out. And that's when Dallas looks its best, when it's high in the tank, occupying a lot of the top half of the water column. We also have the clam at the bottom, which is looking very happy. I think I'll move that forward a little bit. It's not really getting full light at the moment. It's really important with clams that you give them as much light as possible. Now let's have a look at the filtration system underneath the tank, because that is the most special part about this whole system. This is our Himali acrylic sump, and it is absolutely beautiful. It's like a Ferrari engine. We've got it color coded. We've got the black and the red, which matches the Octo Skimmer. So it's a beautiful system. We've got lids on each of the compartments, which means that we've got pretty much zero salt creep. The water flows down the plumbing into the filter socks here. Now this is something that we still have to work on. We're going to get some acrylic filter socks that we can fill with whatever media we choose. I'll probably be putting like a Dacron floss sort of thing in it. The water then overflows into the skimmer section, and our Octo Skimmer is doing great. You can see that it's got what I would say is the perfect amount of skim. This was cleaned out a few days ago and it's already starting to build up again. I may just raise the level that the skimmer is skimming at. There's probably a little bit more waste on the neck than I would like to see. Our biological media is in the section behind, and then the water goes through into the return section here and is pumped back up into the tank. Then we have our control system over here. And so we've mounted the power boards, and I've started Everything's about 90% finished. I haven't quite finished with the labels. I ran out of label maker, but you can see we've got our return pump marked, the skimmers marked, the Gaia. This allows us to turn them off and on very easily on the power board. We also still have a little bit of cable management under here just to tidy it up so there's not quite as many stray cables. And then our dosing system. You can see that our dosing pump is mounted up the top here, and we've got our dosing hose or our tube coming down into the dosing vessels. Now these are also Hamali acrylic dosing vessels, and again they're color coded to match the Sump and the Skimmer. And we'll also be labeling these with a label maker. This is calcium, KH and magnesium. And this feeds over into the section where the return pump is. And we have our dosing tube ports just in here, which is nice and neat, and we can ensure that all of the supplements goes into the vessel, into the return chamber. So we have a few little jobs that we're going to do on the tank. So we'll run you through our sort of normal maintenance on this system. So one part of the sump that I haven't mentioned is the front right section, which is where we store the RO water for the automatic top-up system. Now I'm going to fill that up now, and it's very easy to do. I brought 20 litres of RO water from the shop, and I'm just going to siphon it straight into this section. We've installed a little smart ATO system, and so it just feeds water into the return pump section to keep the water level consistent, which also provides a consistent salinity for the tank. So I'm going to go straight in like so. Let's see if you can see that. So it's quite handy, the size of the hole on the lid of this sump. It's perfect for 12, 16 mil hose just to feed straight in, holds it there for you. Now this RO reservoir holds about 20 litres, and it had probably about 20% full, so I reckon we'll need about down to about there of this 20 litre drum. Maybe not even. So I was last here about 2 weeks ago, I think. So in 2 weeks, the RO reservoir has used about 80% of its capacity. So we have a good size RO reservoir for the system. So it's nice to see that that's working well. Okay, so that's about it. So that's done. We won't have to worry about topping up for the next couple of weeks. And the next thing I'm going to do is fill up the dosing vessels. The most important thing when you've got dosing vessels is to ensure that the dosing vessels don't run dry. And so this is our calcium. So this tank is running on continuum sculpture, and I quite like the sculpture because the calcium does have magnesium as well, but it also has strontium, and it's nice and convenient. This tank doesn't have a huge draw, so it's quite affordable to go for the liquid solutions. And these dosing vessels are great. I don't have to move them. We've got a nice large opening that I'm just going to tip the calcium straight into. You'll also notice the light on this, on the bottom of the vessels, on the dock. It actually helps in this case. It makes it a little bit easier to fill up the vessels. So that's the calcium. These vessels hold 2.5 litres, so it's a perfect size when you're using 2 litre bottles. And this is pretty good, but I'll put a little bit of the buffer in as well. There's no point leaving it low. Now, my rule is always to make sure that you have your vessels labelled, and I'm going to do this with the label maker when we've got it full with labels again, but my rule is always having calcium on the first vessel, the buffer on the second, and magnesium on the third. And I think pretty much all of the brands will have it branded that way as well. It'll be Sculpture A and B, or Fusion 1 and 2. Calcium is almost always the first, and buffer second, and magnesium third. So it's easy to remember, but definitely labels are a good idea in case it's someone else that needs to fill up these, to make it very easy and obvious for them. Okay, it's done. So I'm going to test the water on this system, and we haven't tested the water since before the swap. And the reason why I haven't tested it since is because the change with taking all the corals out and the rock out and putting it back in has almost certainly created some fluctuations and disturbances in the system. But now things are starting to settle down, I'm going to start looking at the calcium, KH and mag, and that will allow me to adjust the dosing pump as required. So we've looked at the water chemistry, and we're running a KH of 8.4, our calcium's at 470, and the magnesium is at 1350. And I'm quite happy with the magnesium and the KH, but I'm going to drop the calcium down a little bit. From 470, I'm going to drop it on the dosing pump by about 10%, because my preference will be running at around about 430. So before we finish up, I'm just going to clean the skimmer quickly and adjust it. So I'll take the cup off, it comes off very easily. I'll clean this in a sec. You can see for only a few days and a low bio-load, I'm very happy with that amount of skim, but I'm going to adjust the skimmer just to raise it up a little bit higher. And I love these octos. It's just an easy case of I'm going to click the turn this little dial once to the right, and that will be a 1 increment increase in the height that it's skimming at. Now, something else you might not be able to quite see on the video, but we have an acrylic mount for our skimmer, and so this allows us to have the skimmer just a little bit higher in the sump, and it gives us a bit more control. But being acrylic and quite open, it's not going to have too much debris accumulating underneath it, but if it does, we can clean it out very easily. So I'll just give this skimmer a quick clean. I'm not going to be too particular about this. We'll be back here in the next week or two, and cleaning the skimmer is something that I generally will get my clients to do as well, so it doesn't get out of control. Normally I'll do this in a bigger bucket, have a bit more space, which would be easier. You can also do this in the laundry sink. Some people do it in the kitchen sink, but it's a bit smelly. All right. So I keep this exhaust hose just up like so. It just makes it easier to reach it when we're draining straight from the cup. Already I can see that the skimmer is skimming, the level is skimming higher in the cup, so this will be even better. And I'll just put this lid back on. So overall, I'm really happy with the way this tank is going. You can see that the corals and the fish are just much happier with the fact they've got more space. I think the tank looks better in the size of the tank, fits the space a lot better, and the corals are happy and healthy, and they're going to do so much better in this tank. So everything is doing well. The next video we do on this tank will be adding the corals. You can see we've got a lot more space now, and there's a few spots in this tank that are just crying out for certain corals. So the next video we do will show you the types of corals that we choose and the locations that we're going to put them in this tank. So thanks for watching Gallery Aquatica TV. I'm Cam the Fish Guy. Happy reefing. So that's our video for today. If you enjoyed it, hit the like button, hit the subscribe as well. We'll be putting out videos every week showing a new tank with new products. There's going to be lots in all the videos. I'm Cam the Fish Guy, and keep on reefing.